Welcome to HFY Beyond Terra, where humanity doesn't just survive, it becomes the galaxy's biggest surprise. Subscribe, and let's go beyond Terra.
The cat's voice came through the translator with a rasping dignity, like someone speaking through old cloth. "We can't hunt, we're useless." The human Mara Klein, formerly of the Terran Survey Corps, currently of nowhere in particular, didn't answer right away. She stood with her boots half buried in powdery snow that wasn't snow at all, but ash-fine pollen shed by the planet's pale trees. Above them, the forest canopy glowed faintly, as if the leaves were storing moonlight. The air smelled clean and wrong, like mint and metal. The cat sat on a fallen log, tail wrapped neatly around its paws. It was smaller than the cats Mara had known on Earth, built for quickness, not cuddliness. Its fur was a dark storm color that swallowed light. Its eyes, wide and reflective, watched the forest with anxious calculation. Around its neck hung a smooth collar of woven fiber stamped with a simple symbol, 3 dots in a triangle, property mark. "Your people built collars to say you belong," Mara said. She crouched, fingers brushing the mark, "and then told you you're useless." "We were bred," the cat replied. "Selected for quiet paws and pleasant faces. Our purpose was companionship, decoration. We are not like the wild ones." Mara's gaze tracked the distant movement of something between the glowing trunks, a shadow low to the ground. It paused, it listened, it vanished. "Companionship is not nothing," Mara said. The cat's ears tilted back. "It is less than hunting, less than surviving, less than being needed." Mara sat on her heels. There was a bruise under her ribs that flared whenever she breathed too deep, and a dry ache in her throat from rationed water and recycled air. The emergency pod had burned its way down through atmosphere 2 days ago, screaming like a comet. The distress beacon was dead. The pod was smashed into a ravine half a kilometer away, leaking coolant and hope. "I'm not going to argue philosophy with you," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "We need food, we need shelter, we need options." The cat blinked slowly. "Options are for those who can do things." Mara smiled without humor. "Then we'll learn to do things." The cat's whiskers twitched. "We can't, our claws are trimmed, our instincts were softened, we were punished for biting, we were praised for obedience." "Punished for biting," Mara repeated softly. "That'll sound familiar." The cat's eyes flicked to her hands, the hands that shook when they weren't busy. Mara rose, dusting pollen from her knees. "Come on then, if you're useless, at least be useless in motion." The cat hesitated. The collar's translator node pulsed faintly as it recorded. The whole device had been built to carry orders in a language the cats could not misinterpret. Yet here it was, translating a confession. Mara had found the cat on the first night, shivering under a rock shelf, collar blinking red in the darkness like a tiny emergency light. It had looked at her with the same expression she'd seen in evacuees on burning worlds, too tired to run, too afraid to stay. Mara had unclipped the leash that trailed uselessly from the collar. It had followed anyway. Now it hopped down from the log and padded beside her. Its steps were careful, silent, but not confident. "What's your name?" Mara asked. There was a pause. "We were called Unit 9, Mara winced. "That's not a name, that's inventory. It is what we were." "Not anymore," she said. "You choose." The cat's tail flicked, uncertain. "Choose what?" "Choose what you answer to, choose who you are." The cat stared at the ground as if the question required a map. "We do not know." Mara nodded like that was acceptable. "Then I'll call you Ash," she said, glancing at the pollen that coated everything, softening edges, making the world look like it had survived a fire. "Until you tell me otherwise." "Ash," the cat repeated. It sounded out the word like a foreign taste. "Good." Mara pushed between 2 luminous trunks and into thicker undergrowth. Her suit's torn thigh seam brushed against fibrous vines. Her breath fogged her visor. She'd cracked it open for air and now regretted it as the cold bit her cheeks. "I can't hunt either," she said, more to the forest than the cat. "Not like the stories say." Ash's ears shifted. "Humans hunted." Once, Mara admitted. Once we did, then we built tools so we didn't have to, then we built systems, then we built comforts, then we forgot what it felt like to be hungry in a place that didn't care if we lived. Yet you are here, Ash said. Yeah, Mara breathed. Here I am. They climbed a ridge where the trees thinned and the ground turned to dark stone. From the crest, the forest unfurled, endless pale glow under a violet sky. Far away, a river cut through it like a silver scar. Mara scanned for movement. We need something slow, something that doesn't have teeth bigger than my fist. Ash stared over the vastness. There are hunters here. Everything is a hunter, Mara said. Even the plants probably. Ash's voice lowered. We smell them sometimes, the long ones, the ones that sing in the dark. Mara kept her eyes on the tree line. We'll avoid those. Ash's tail fluffed slightly. Avoiding is not the same as surviving. No, Mara agreed, but it's a start. They descended toward the river. Along the way, Mara pointed out signs, a patch of flattened pollen where something had slept, a broken branch with sap still wet, a line of small prints that looked like someone had pressed a three-pronged stamp into the ground. Ash watched, absorbing, skeptical but curious. You can read the ground. I can guess, Mara corrected. Reading is what makes you sure, guessing is what keeps you alive long enough to learn. Ash's ears angled forward. Teach us. The words hit Mara in the ribs harder than the bruise. It was the first time Ash had asked for anything. Okay, she said softly. Okay, first lesson, you're not useless. Ash's whiskers quivered. That is not a lesson. It is. Mara stopped beside the river bank. The water moved with a slow, heavy pull like it was thinking. Bioluminescent algae traced faint lines along the current, turning eddies into pale spirals. Mara knelt and dipped a sensor strip into the river. It blinked green, drinkable at least by the suit's standards. Ash leaned close but didn't touch the water. We cannot swim. Neither can I in this suit, Mara said. She filled a canteen, then offered Ash a shallow cup she'd fashioned from a piece of pod plating. Ash drank carefully, tongue flicking, eyes never leaving the forest. You're always looking for danger, Mara noted. Ash swallowed. Because danger comes. Mara's gaze swept along the bank. Tiny crabs, or something like crabs, skittered between stones, clicking faintly. A fat amphibian blinked at her from a reed cluster, then vanished with a splash. Food. Mara reached for a flat rock. Second lesson, you don't have to be born a hunter to catch something. Ash watched. Mara moved slowly, trying to remember old training videos and even older instincts. She lowered the rock toward a crab creature, misjudged, and struck water instead. The crab shot away. Mara exhaled, embarrassed. Okay, maybe you do have to be born a hunter. Ash made a sound that through the translator came out as amusement. You laughed at me. We did not laugh, Ash said primly. We observed. Mara grinned despite herself. Yeah, sure, she tried again, slower. This time she pinned a crab against a stone. It wriggled, legs scraping. Mara's stomach twisted, violence, small but real. She'd eaten protein bars and synthesized meals her whole life. She'd never had to feel the moment food turned into not food. Ash crept closer, eyes intent. Now what? Now we finish it, Mara said, voice tight. Ash stared at the struggling creature. We were told killing is wrong. Mara's jaw flexed. Killing for cruelty is wrong. Killing because you want to feel powerful is wrong. Killing to live is complicated. Ash's pupils widened. Complicated is what humans say when they want to do something forbidden. Mara looked at Ash, really looked. Maybe, she admitted, or maybe complicated is what you say when you're tired of lies. She ended the crab quickly, as gently as she could, and set it aside. Her hands trembled. Ash watched, silent. Mara washed her gloves in the river. Third lesson, don't waste. That night, they made a small fire under an overhang. Mara used the emergency flare's chemical strip sparingly, coaxing flames from damp kindling. The crab meat, roasted on a piece of metal, smelled briny and strange but edible. Ash sat close to the warmth, eyes half-lidded. We have never eaten like this. You've eaten, Mara said, tearing a small piece and offering it, just not earned. Ash sniffed the meat, hesitated, then took it delicately. For a moment, Ash's whole body went still. Then its ears lifted and it chewed with a seriousness that made Mara's throat tighten. This is, Ash searched for a word. Real. Yeah, Mara whispered, real. Wind moved through the trees with a low sigh. In the distance, something called long harmonic notes that made Mara's skin crawl. Ash's fur rose. The long ones, Ash said, they sing. Mara pulled her jacket tighter. We'll keep the fire low. Ash watched the darkness. They hunt by sound. Then we'll be quiet, Mara said. Ash's gaze flicked to her face. You said you would show us who we can be. Mara stared into the fire. Embers shifted like tiny stars. I will, she said, but you're going to do most of the showing. Ash's ears angled sideways. How? Mara held up a small blade from her kit, not a weapon meant for cutting fabric, opening crates, trimming away damage, still a blade. Your claws were trimmed, she said. Not removed, they'll grow. Your instincts were softened but not erased. Your fear was trained into you. That training can be untrained. Ash looked down at its paws as if seeing them for the first time. We are afraid. Me too, Mara admitted. Fear isn't shame, it's information. Ash's tail curled tighter. Information says we will die. Mara shook her head. Information says we have to pay attention. She leaned closer. Listen, you were made to be quiet, right? To move without disturbing, to notice moods, to notice shifts. That's not useless, that's power. Ash blinked. Power is hunting. Power is adaptation, Mara countered. Hunting is just one kind. Ash's gaze drifted to the river beyond the overhang. Then teach us adaptation. Mara smiled, small and tired. Okay, fourth lesson, learn the place you're in. Over the next days they did. They mapped the river's bend and the safe stones for crossing. Mara marked trees with shallow notches. Ash learned to recognize which glowing berries made Mara's tongue numb and which ones made her stomach settle. They discovered a plant that exuded sticky sap, good for sealing the tear in Mara's suit seam. They found burrows where small, fat creatures slept in clusters, warm and stupid with safety. Ash watched Mara set simple traps from vines and springy branches. Mara watched Ash watch the forest. Because Ash saw things Mara didn't. Once Ash froze mid-step, ears swiveling, and Mara stopped too, just before a patch of ground gave way into a hidden sinkhole lined with thorns. Another time, Ash pressed low and growled softly, and Mara ducked, just as a dart-like spine shot from a nearby shrub and struck the tree where her head had been. You're not useless, Mara said after that one, heart hammering. Ash's voice came out tight. We noticed. You noticed, Mara agreed. That's hunting too, Ash's eyes narrowed. Noticing is not killing. Noticing keeps you alive, Mara said. Alive is step one. On the seventh day, Mara counted because counting gave her something to hold. The long ones came closer. They were not long in the way snakes were long. They were long in the way shadows were long, stretched, thin, too many joints. They moved through the trees without bending branches. Their singing wasn't loud, it slid into the bones, humming against teeth. Mara and Ash were crouched in a hollow beneath roots when the first note drifted down like warm breath. Ash's body trembled. They are near. Mara put a finger to her lips. She turned off her suit's minor systems, killing soft whirs. The silence that followed was heavy. The singing shifted. A second voice joined, harmonizing. Mara felt it vibrate in her ribs. She clenched her jaw. They hunt by sound, she mouthed to Ash. Ash's eyes were huge. Its ears quivered, tracking. Then, to Mara's surprise, Ash lifted one paw and pressed it gently against Mara's sleeve, right where the fabric rubbed her skin when she moved. A warning, don't breathe too loud. Don't shift, Mara stilled, grateful. The singing drifted closer. Between the roots, Mara saw a shape slide past, a limb, a spine, something that reflected faintly like wet glass. It paused. Mara's heart slammed. She knew with cold certainty that if she ran, it would hear. If she fought, she would lose. If she stayed, she might still lose, but maybe. Ash made a sound, not a meow, not a whine, a perfectly pitched, tiny chirp like a bird's call, sharp and bright. Mara's eyes snapped to Ash in horror. As Ash chirped again, then again, each chirp thrown to the left, the sound bouncing off roots and stones. The long one singing faltered. It turned, following the false trail. Ash's fur stood on end. It chirped a final time, then pressed flat against the earth, holding its breath. The long one slid away, its song reforming as it moved toward the decoy sound. Mara didn't move until the notes faded into distance. Then she exhaled, shaking. Ash lifted its head. We were quiet, it said, as if surprised by itself, and we made noise. You tricked it, Mara whispered. Ash's ears flicked, uncertain. We lied. Mara let out a short, breathless laugh that was half sob. Welcome to survival. Ash stared at its own paws again. We did something. You did, Mara said, voice thick. You did exactly what a hunter does. Ash's eyes met hers. Something in them had changed, not fear gone, but fear rearranged. A new shape. We are not useless, Ash said, like testing the words for fit. Mara nodded. Fifth lesson, you are what you do, not what you were told. That night, Ash did not curl only for warmth. It stayed near the edge of their shelter, alert, listening, not as a decoration, not as inventory, but as a sentry. Mara watched it and felt a tightness in her chest that wasn't only the bruise. In the following days, Ash began to choose. It chose which paths felt wrong and which ones felt safe. It chose when to eat and when to wait. It chose to practice climbing, claws scraping bark, falling, trying again. It chose to approach the burrow creatures not as a pet meeting prey for the first time, but as a creature weighing distance, wind, timing. Once Mara watched Ash stalk a river amphibian. The cat moved so slowly it seemed the world was moving around it. It paused when the wind shifted. It adjusted. Then with a sudden blur it pounced. The amphibian squealed. Ash held it, stunned, then looked back at Mara with wide eyes. We caught it, Ash said, voice trembling with shock. Mara's grin was fierce. You did. Ash's paws shook. Now we must, Mara swallowed. The old discomfort rose again, but she forced herself to meet Ash where it stood. Now we thank it, she said quietly, and we don't waste it. Ash's ears tilted. Thank it, Mara nodded. We didn't ask to be here, neither did it, but here we are. So we do what we must, and we don't pretend it's nothing. Ash's grip gentled. It ended the amphibian quickly, then sat, breathing hard. For a long moment the translator was silent. Then Ash said softly, we were made to be small. Mara crouched beside it. Small doesn't mean weak. We were made to obey. You don't have to, Mara said. Ash's gaze drifted to the collar, the property mark, the blinking node. What if the ones who made us return? Ash asked. What if they take us back? Mara's jaw tightened. Then we run, she said, or we fight, or we hide, or we do whatever keeps you yours. Ash's eyes narrowed. We do not want to be Unit 9 again. You won't be, Mara said, and surprised herself with how certain it sounded. That evening, Mara took the blade from her kit and worked at the collar's seam. It was built to resist removal, fiber layers, smart locks, hidden sensors, but the crash had damaged something. The node flickered unevenly. Ash sat perfectly still while Mara pried, cut, and coaxed. The collar hummed, then gave with a soft snap. It fell into Mara's hands like a dead thing. Ash's fur rippled along its spine as if a weight had lifted that it hadn't realized it carried. We are, Ash began, then stopped. Mara held the collar up. This doesn't get to name you, she said. She tossed it into the fire. The plastic caught, blackened, curled. The translator's light blinked wildly, then went out. As Ash watched it burn, eyes reflecting flame. When the collar was gone, Ash spoke again, but this time there was no machine smoothing its words. It was only sound, a series of low, rough syllables, feline and alien, carrying meaning Mara couldn't parse. Mara didn't understand the language, but she understood the act. You named yourself, she whispered. Ash blinked and after a moment made the closest approximation it could in Terran's speech. Its voice quieter now without the device, but still clear enough. Ash, it said, then after a pause, and something more, but you will not say it right. Mara smiled, eyes burning. Then I'll learn. For the first time since the pod fell, Mara felt something like a future, not a rescue promised by a beacon, not a ship on a schedule, but the simple, stubborn fact of two beings becoming more than what had been decided for them. They were cold, they were hungry, they were lost, but they were learning. And in the violet dusk, with the luminous forest whispering and the long ones singing far away, a human and a cat sat by a small fire, two creatures built by different worlds, both told they were meant for something narrow. Mara leaned back against the stone and watched Ash watch the dark. "We can't hunt," Ash said quietly, as if remembering the beginning. Mara shook her head. "You already did." Ash's ears twitched, considering. "Then what are we?" Mara looked at the stars peeking through the canopy, strange constellations, unfamiliar patterns, but still light in darkness. "You're not useless," she said. "You're becoming." Ash's tail curled around its paws, steady now. "Becoming," it echoed. Mara nodded. "Let me show you who you can be," she added, voice low and fierce. "And then you show me too." Ash blinked slowly, a gesture that was quite trust but close. In the wild glow of an alien forest, that was enough to start.